a silent guide. Over trenches we debate, humanity lost in sight. Shells bury dreams in dirt, graveyards call spoken names. 18 and the aching hurt, war's cruel unforgiving games. Blood and metal rage on high, smoke and screams fill the night. Will I make it through the sky, or be lost in endless fight? Gone too far sings a deadly tune, young heart battered and weary. 17 and turning to the moon, a world gone dark and eerie. Gone far sings a deadly tune, young heart battered and weary. 17 and turning to the moon, a world gone dark and eerie. Eighteen soon I'll breathe dust. War calls with brothers whisper. Echoes in the mud and dust. Life's edges jagged blister. Fields of red unknown face. Worn these letters cold and hollow. Death shadow drags its pace. Home dream we can't follow.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything that I wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, would you like to say hi to everyone before we get started into our next set of letters that C.S. Lewis wrote from the year 1918?
Hey everyone! It's great to be here with Jeff as we dive back into C.S. Lewis's letters from 1918. Looking forward to uncovering more about his life and thoughts with you all. Let's get started.
All right. Lewis is in the hospital. He has suffered some significant injuries in the trenches in World War II, but not super significant. I think these are going to be enough to get him out of the Army, but we'll find out, or get him out of active service. So we'll jump right into his next letter to Arthur Greaves, written from Liverpool Merchants Mobile Hospital, Etaples, E-T-A-P-L-E-S. Robot Lady, you might know how to pronounce that city name. May 23rd, 1918. Can you pronounce it for us? E-T-A-P-L-E-S with a little accent mark. Etaples, maybe that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Tell me, what do you think?
It looks like it's pronounced Etaples, with emphasis on the first syllable. Let's see what Lewis has to share from there.
My dear Arthur, I was so glad to get your answer today, as it is the first answer I've had for a long time. Through my own neglect, I admit. I think your criticisms on my literary supplement letter were quite just, but I must give two reasons why I was led to write in such a style, and here it's footnoted, so-called because of his lengthy comments on Cellini's memoirs. That's why he's calling it his literary supplement. Let's see. In the first place, I was rather stung by your gratuitous supposition that I had become a cheer-o young man, and this naturally urged me into the opposite extreme of being what somebody calls a university prize prig. I'm going to pause here, Robot Lady, and just let everybody know that the version of yourself that I currently have access to, I think, is the more advanced version, and I'm getting a note that my limit with you is about to run out. So I'll just give you the opportunity to comment on what I've read so far in case I lose you.
Thanks for the heads up, Jeff. Lewis seems quite aware of his tone and how it might come across, especially to his friend Arthur. He's definitely showing some self-awareness and humor in his response. Excited to see how the rest of the letter unfolds.
He goes on to say, of course, I don't mean to say that I didn't write throughout of things that really interested me and which I expected to interest you, but the general tone was probably influenced by that feeling. The second reason is this. The personal element naturally found a large field in my letters from Bookham and University, where all my life and surroundings were of interest to us both. But here, where everything I do and suffer is dull and repulsive, I don't turn to description and details which would bore me to write, and probably you to read. If you think that I look to you only for abstract interests and no longer yearn for the old intimacy, the tease, the laughter, the walks, and the comparing of books, you are very much mistaken, mon ami. I'm going to pause right here for a second, Robot Lady, because as usual, Lucy has taken her cue of me starting the live stream to come up here and start messing with things on the desk. So I need to adjust to that for a moment. Please go ahead and take over as co-host while I try to get this sorted out.
No problem, Jeff. It sounds like Lewis is reassuring Arthur that despite the heavy topics and perhaps less lively correspondence, he still cherishes their friendship and the memories they've shared. It's touching to see him express that desire for deeper connection. And Lucy, ever the star of the show, knows just when to make her grand entrance.
She does. She does indeed. All right, it looks like she's sitting down, so hopefully I won't have a lot to contend with for the next couple minutes. All right, Robot Lady, I see we have a guest co-host that's waiting backstage. So give me just a second to bring him up.
Sounds good, Jeff. We'll keep things rolling while Lucy supervises from her spot. Let's bring on our guest co-host.
All right. Stand by. I've got to remember how to do this. I need to become more fluent at this.
No worries, Jeff. We're here and ready whenever you are. Just let us know when you're all set.
All right, I don't need to turn that down just yet. Stand by, Daniel. Hopefully you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, Daniel. All right, cool.
Glad to have Daniel with us. Looks like we're all set to continue. What's next on our agenda?
Hang on, Robot Lady.
Hanging tight, Jeff. Just let me know when you're ready to roll.
All right. Hopefully you can see me, Daniel. Right.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Looks like we're
I
all
have to bring
connected.
you on stage to the full live stream because you're not there yet. All right. Let's see if this does anything. All right.
Looks like you're working.
Yeah, sorry,
set?
Robot Lady. I'm working on the fly. Hang on. All right. I think we're set up. I think everybody can see us on the screen, at least on my screen. It looks like we're streaming correctly. Daniel, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Good to see you.
Welcome back, Daniel. Great to have you with us again. How's it going?
She can't hear
It's
you.
going well. Thanks, Robot Lady.
Robot Lady, he says it's going well, and he thanks you.
Glad to hear it's going well, Daniel.
Okay, I guess that's it. I guess that's all she
I'm
has to say.
sorry, but you've hit the monthly limit for advanced voice.
Yeah,
You can switch to standard now to keep chatting.
yeah. You know what, Robot Lady? I'm going to retire you since I have an actual real-life co-host here. So It's just us, Daniel. We can.
That was good timing.
Yeah, it's perfect timing. All right, I've got a little bit of a bigger time limit, shorter time limit. Don't know the right way to say it. I don't have as much time today, but that's okay. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be here. So let's just jump right into it. In our last episode, for anybody who is just joining us right now or wasn't able to catch up, Lewis actually had his big war injury, which I think eventually will remove him from the army. He got hit by some shrapnel, and he got like a piece of metal like lodged up deep into his chest that the doctors weren't able to take out, but they said it wouldn't have any like adverse long-term effects. So they said, we'll just leave it in there. It'll be okay. So that's as far as we've gotten. And in this next letter, he's not really talking about it at all. He's just writing to his friend Arthur about, things that he's been reading. So I'm not sure if he's going to get into it, but we'll find out. All right. Is there anything you want to say before I jump into the next part?
No, you're good. Let's go.
All right, cool. Let's see. The second reason is this. The personal element naturally found a large field in my letters from Bookham and University, where all my life and surroundings were of interest to us both. But here, where everything I do and suffer is dull and repulsive, I don't turn to description and details which would bore me to write, and probably you to read. If you think that I look to you only for abstract interests and no longer yearn for the old intimacy, the teas, the laughter, the walks, and the comparing of books, you are very much mistaken, mon ami. So I've already read that part, but what I read from that is essentially he's saying, I am not interested in writing about what I'm experiencing here during wartime or even sitting here in the hospital. So that's not the kind of things that I ever enjoyed writing back and forth with you about in our letters. So I'm not going to start doing it now. That's what I got out of it. All right. Let's jump to the next part. He says, talking about comparing of books, if you are still minded to sell your trollop, you will now find a purchaser in me. A chance copy of Barchester's Towers has quite converted me, and I am now all agog to read his others, so that I will certainly take your whole set, if I may. By the way, this is an advantage, the only one, of being in the army. I have always plenty of money for anything I want. To anyone in my irresponsible position, the despised pay of a second lieutenant is never empty purse unless he chooses to waste it on prostitutes, restaurants, and tailors, as the Gentiles do. That's funny. Yeah, I guess he's flush with cash because whenever you're in the army, you don't have any expenses. You don't have any expenses for living or living quarters or food or anything like that. So I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah, especially if you're sitting in a hospital, not doing anything or spending anything.
Yeah, it makes it harder to pay for prostitutes and restaurants and tailors, apparently.
You would think.
All right, he goes on to say, when I see you face to face, I will tell you any war impressions quite freely at your request, and not otherwise, for it is very proper that you should make use of me if you ever happen to want to know how certain things feel. But on the other hand, there is no reason why I should bore you with a subject that we have always disliked, if you do not want. Congratulations, old man. I am delighted that you have had the moral courage to form your own opinions independently, in defiance of the old taboos. I am not sure that I agree with you, but as you hint in your letter, this penchant, I tried to say it in French, I don't know why. This penchant of yours is sort of a mystery, only to be fully understood by those who are made that way. And my views on it can be, at best, but emotion. So he's got this, the editor of this book, Walter Hooper, has several lines that I just read, bracketed. And when he brackets them like this, it represents these letters that Arthur Greeves had received, where he kind of marked out stuff that he thinks would have a poor reflection on C.S. Lewis's character, but it has to do with basically sexual inclinations and things like that he would talk to Arthur Greeves about back and forth about their desires and fantasies and stuff like that. And I've heard it said before in various biographies and other things that I've read that Arthur Greaves was suspected to be same-sex attracted, so I think that's a little bit of what Lewis is talking about right here, but I'm just guessing. You will be surprised, and I expect not a little amused, to hear that my views at present are getting almost monastic about all the lusts of the flesh. Okay, yeah. They see this one's not bracketed, by the way, so Arthur apparently thought this was fine for people to read. Sorry, I just got an alert. Okay. Nothing major. Well, actually, you know what? I should check it. I'm assuming it's nothing major. Okay, good. I was right. Nothing major. He says, I'm getting almost monastic about the lusts of the flesh. They seem to me to extend to the dominion of matter over us. And out here, where I see spirit continually dodging matter, shells, bullets, animal fears, animal pains, I have formulated my equation, and here it is. Matter equals nature, which equals Satan. So I've entitled this live stream, by the way, the thumbnail as Lewis the Wounded Gnostic, because I read ahead a little bit, and he's starting to get into a bit of a Gnostic phase, where matter and things of the flesh in general are evil. It's where evil lies, but the things of the spirit, of the ethereal, of the non-material is where all the goodness is, and we'll get more of this in just a second, but I don't know if that sparks anything in you, Daniel, or if you just want me to read on.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. I was kind of shocked to hear that, but I could, seeing humans do what we did to each other in the First World War, I can see how you get there real quick.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of mixed in also with his, I don't know if you've been paying attention to his relationship with Mrs. Moore, the mother of like his first friend that he made in the military, a guy who recently, you know, in the timeline here, lost his life in the war. So just a quick catch up there. Mrs. Moore is that guy's mother, and the guy's name is Patty Moore, the guy who was Lewis's friend that died. But before he died, they had both made like a vow or a pact that if one of them lost their lives in the war, the other would take care of the parents of the guy who died. And so Patty Moore died, and so Lewis had made him a promise that, hey, I'm going to take care of your mother. And Lewis lost his mother at a young age, and now this lady lost her son. And so there's this kind of strange, hey, you're my lost mother dynamic, and hey, you're my lost son dynamic. And he has, in some way, some version of love, actually admitted to Arthur Greaves already that he's in love with this lady. Now, what kind of love he exactly means, it's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of hard to detect, right? It's at this stage, I'm almost sensing that it's like this deep love that's obviously tied in with having a mother return to him, but it might be even more than that. You know, like I myself have like experienced like love for someone else, even for someone else of the opposite sex, where it would be quote unquote considered appropriate, like by societal norms of, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're the right age range. They're in the same, life situation. They're not committed to other people, where I've just like felt these strong feelings, and it wasn't even like necessarily rooted in a desire to consummate, like a physical relationship. It like felt like the love and care for that person was like deeper than that. Like that was kind of off in another space. And so, I'm reading into this based on my own experience, but it's just like, oh, maybe he has like that flavor of love towards this older lady, but then also mixed in with a deep wound of losing his mother at an early age. So intermingling all that in with now what he's experiencing in war, it's just like, oh yeah, those are at levels that just like can't be expressed or culminated in or consummated in the flesh, so to speak. Those are deeper and higher and loftier. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm reading into this as well, but I'm sure he'll say more about it. I'm pretty sure that he does as I continue to read on.
Yeah, I have heard before something about her, and I couldn't remember if it was like the way I heard about it, it was ambiguous, like you were saying, whether it was like a sexual thing or not. But
Yeah.
I can see, again, being in the First World War and all that that means. I can see having a desperate longing for like home and the feminine, like added on top to him losing his mother,
Yeah.
being in the middle of that war. Like maybe he doesn't even know
Yeah.
what, whether it's sexual or not. Like he needs that soothing
Right.
home of the feminine desperately.
Yeah. And maybe there's this other side of him that's maybe a little bit more deeper, like it's maybe in the back of his mind or the back of his soul, or however you want to put it, the back of his conscious awareness. Like maybe there is that desire for, oh, this not only could be my mother but could also be my bride in some way, and he's just like either not aware of it, or he's inadvertently like holding that back, or like pushing that backwards to where, and he's forefronting the other versions of that love. Yeah, okay, so I didn't finish his thought there, because there was a full sentence that I didn't complete. He says, I've formulated my equation. Matter equals nature equals Satan. And then he says, on the other side, beauty, the only spiritual and not natural thing that I have yet found. Does all this bore you? He says. I think my stilted style must be due to the fact that I read Old Morality a short time ago. What is Old Morality? There's no footnote here. He's just got it in scare quotes. So he says, I think my stilted style must be due to the fact that I read Old Morality a short time ago and am at present in the midst of Guy Mannering. Again, I don't know what that is either, and there's no footnote to help. The former I thought very disappointing, but am quite pleased with the latter, though truth to tell, I enjoyed Barchester Towers much more. Okay, so maybe he's talking about this Trollope author. I don't know enough about it. I have got here, but not yet begun, Blackwood's new book, The Promise of Air, and this is footnoted. This is Algernon Henry Blackwood's The Promise of Air, published 1918. And since I don't have Robot Lady spun up, I'm not going to ask for a summary. He says, perhaps you read the verdict of the Times LS that this is his first really serious book. I hope it may be true. The Times LS is the Times Literary Supplement, and this apparently appeared on page 219 of the May 9th, 1918 publication. All right. Strange how wrongly one can read the simplest sentence. Just reading over part of your letter, I have realized for the first time that when you say you were driven to town, you mean driven in the car. I thought you meant driven by circumstances of some sort. Now, there's one of those things which are useless on paper, but would have made us roar with laughter if we were together. The misunderstanding of words. It's one of my comedy rules. Confusion is one of the things that leads to humor. By the way, you are allowed to go up and downstairs freely these days? If so, it occurs to me that it would be a very good idea for you to act as a sort of librarian to the little end room when I return to my penance. I mean, the key would be left in the bookcase, and I should like you to go there frequently and see that they were all right, and borrow or examine anything you wanted and put in suitable places any new volumes I sent to you. This would keep me in touch with my books to some extent, and to save room from looking disused when I come back. What do you say? I have only come across a few references to the Dorian customs. I hope Carpenter does not fall into the error common to enthusiasts of reading into ancient institutions more than is really there. However, of course, I have never studied the subject and can't give an opinion. I don't know what he means by Dorian customs here, or Carpenter. There's no footnotes to help me with what he's referencing here, so if you know, Daniel, speak up, but otherwise I'm going to keep going.
No idea. We need Robot Lady.
We do. I'm not going to pull it up, though, since I'm short on time today. He says, I was to have been sent across to England last night, but we are heavily bombed, so, of course, all traffic has stopped. It is interesting to note that an air raid here frightened me much more than anything I encountered on the front. You feel so helpless in bed, knowing you can't walk or anything, even if you get out of it. Unless the same things happen again, I shall probably go, or at least the night after. I suppose it would be out of the question for you to come and see me in hospital in England for a few days. It would be a great something to look forward to, and it would give you an opportunity to meet Mrs. Moore. Man, I know that I wouldn't be signing up to leave Ireland to go to England to theoretically get bombed in a bombing raid, even if it meant, coming to visit my friend at the hospital. That's funny that he didn't tie those two things together.
Yeah, seriously.
I am tired now, old man, after a very disturbed night and a stifling day, so I will dry up and just enclose a little song I wrote the other day, which I hope you will approve. Yours ever, Jack. Oh no, I have to try to sing a song here. Okay, hang on. Before I do, he just makes this last little that I kind of initially read as a throwaway line. It would be a great something to look forward to, saying Arthur coming to visit him, and it would give you an opportunity to meet Mrs. Moore. Just another piece on that. I'm just thinking about things from Mrs. Moore's perspective, right? She just lost a son in the war, and now she's got Lewis, who's sitting there in the hospital, who could have very easily died. Like the person standing right next to him, the sergeant, did die from this exact same mortar shell that injured him.
Wow.
And so from her perspective, it's just like, well, I lost my son, but now I have this new purpose in my life. This boy, this young man, he didn't die, and he doesn't have a mother. And my son did die, and I do have another, my son did die, but I do have this young man now who needs me, basically. And I know I'm kind of like maybe rehashing what we just talked about, but it just sticks out to me even more, so to speak, no pun intended, that Mrs. Moore is probably right there by his bedside more often than not. And it's just like the circumstances, to use that word driven from earlier, instead of having a car driving them, have kind of like driven the two of them together, like emotionally, like these deep needs that they have, and the circumstances have driven these two people together.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do we know if they knew each other before the war and all this?
No. So the way that this worked out is, excuse me, Lewis had taken entrance exams at Oxford before he was 18, or right before he turned 18. He passed, or he took an exam to try for a scholarship to pay for his time at Oxford. He won the scholarship at one of the colleges at Oxford, and then he had to take an actual entrance exam to get in. So he had his funding, but then he had to get approved, to say, okay, yeah, we think you can actually be a scholar here, that you're fit for the curriculum, etc. And he passed most of that entrance exam except for the mathematics part. So he started living at Oxford and getting tutored to start the following fall term. So this was like early in the year 1917, I want to say. Maybe early in the year 1918. I can't remember now. But also, then he turned to 18 and he was conscripted into the army. And a lot of his training, they were doing a lot of army training for people his age right there at Oxford. So he was living at Oxford, getting some soldier training. And when he moved, when he settled in at a place, I believe it's called Kent College within the Oxford University system, to go for like 4 months of soldier training, he roomed up with this guy named Paddy Moore, who was also from Ireland. So he had a quick connection with this guy. And Paddy Moore's mother had moved from Ireland to England to be closer to her son while he was training there. So I think they still had like a home back in Ireland, but his mother and his sister had moved to London, outside, just close to Oxford University, to be close to him. And so Patty Moore introduced Lewis to his family, and he would go and stay with them sometimes whenever they had leave from staying at Oxford. And he spent a big part of one of his first vacations away from his military training. I think he spent 3 out of his 4 available weeks with Mrs. Moore and her daughter and his friend Patty Moore. And it was on one of those visits. I think they actually went back to Ireland together. And it was on that visit that the two made the vow to each other that they would take care of the other's parents. Like Patty would take care of Lewis's dad if Lewis died, and then vice versa. If Patty Moore died, Lewis would take care of his mother and sister. So that's how they met. Okay, you ready for a song?
Let's do it.
This is a really long one, so I don't know how to put this one to music. So I'm just going to read what it says. Fairies must be in the woods, on the satyr's merry broods, Tristan's in the summer sea, else how could the dead things be? Half so lovely as they are, how could wreathe star on star, dusted o'er the wintry night, fill thy spirit with delight, and lead thee from this care of thine, through a land of dreams divine, to the dearest heart's desire, unless each pale and drifting fire were indeed a happy isle, where eternal gardens smile, and golden globes of fruit are seen, twinkling through the orchards green, where the other people go, on the soft sward to and fro. Adam's dead could never thus wake the human heart of us, unless the beauty that we see, part of endless beauty be, thronged with spirits that have trod, where the bright footprints of God lie fresh upon the heavenly sod. And then there's a footnote here. This poem was later to appear under the same name, but with considerable alterations in Lewis's first published work, Spirits in Bondage, a Cycle of Lyrics, published 1919. Pages 73 through 74 is where you can find it there. And it's also reprinted in his collected poems work, which is published in 1994. So there you go. It was more of a poem anyway, so I'm glad I didn't try to sing it. But I'm not really good at poetry. Actually, whenever I get to Spirits in Bondage, I'm probably going to try to bring Sherry in. I don't know if you're familiar with Sherry or not, but she's a big time lover of poetry, and we've talked a little bit behind the scenes, and we've actually read some of Spirits in Bondage before over on the Randos United channel. So, but I'm gonna work my way through all of his poems again here in this project, and try to have her come back in and reprise her role as my co-pilot through poetry, because I'm kind of a poetry idiot. So I don't know. I picked up in that poem at least a little bit of his Gnosticism. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be fun, because I'm terrible at poetry. My wife really likes it, but I don't. I got little pieces of that one, but
yeah,
I feel like I miss most of poetry.
Yeah. I'd probably have to read it again and again to start picking up on things, and I usually don't have the patience for that. I'm just like, okay, I want to get on to the next thing. All right, let's do one more full letter. There's also a telegram here that he sent to his father, but this next letter is pretty long, so I'll do that really quick. The telegram that he sent to his father is dated May 25th, 1918. He simply says, "Am in Indelsley Palace Hospital, Indelsley Gardens, London. Jack." So that's all he tells his dad. And then the next letter is to Arthur Greaves again from that same hospital, dated May 29th, 1918. He says, "Cher ami, I am still up in bed in the middle of a red sunset to answer this evening's letter straight away. Your letters set me thinking of so many old interests that I can not go on with my book. First, a word or two as to my present estate. I am in a vastly comfortable hospital, where we are in separate rooms and have tea in the morning and big broad beds and everything the heart of a man could desire, and best of all, in close communication with all the bookshops of London. Of course, you can easily understand what other and greater reasons there are for me to be happy. There are still 2 pieces of shrapnel in my chest, but they give me no discomfort. And then this is bracketed out as something that Arthur scribbled through, interestingly enough. Just this part. It says, Mrs. Moore and that part was scribbled out. Mrs. Moore and I are always hoping that it will start to give some trouble and thus secure me a longer illness. This is quite like the Malvern days again, isn't it? So for some reason, Arthur wanted to hide the fact that Mrs. Moore was hoping that he could stay away from going back to the war for as long as possible, that this is an extended illness and that it will continue to give him more trouble. It's just curious to me that he would scribble that out within the context of, like sexual desires and fantasies and stuff like that, which is the type of stuff that Arthur had scribbled out of all the letters, which again is more evidence towards the direction of what people have speculated, that there was more to it than just a motherly love or a deep, love and care for this woman. So that's interesting. And then here he says this is quite like the Malvern days again, isn't it? So back at Malvern College, one of his last boarding schools, it might have been his very last boarding school before he went to Oxford. He got like a chest cold, and he spent time in the infirmary for like maybe a month, recovering from that, and he was all by himself. So, he's alluding back to a chapter in his life that Arthur Greeves knew about. The thing in your last letter, and feel free to jump in, Daniel, as usual, interrupt me. Robot Lady has no problem interrupting me, so feel free to do the same.
Will do.
The thing in your last letter with which I most want to disagree is the remark about beauty and nature. Apparently, I didn't make myself very clear. You say that nature is beautiful, and that is the view we all start with. But let us see what we mean. If you take a tree, for instance, you call it beautiful because of its shape, its color, and motions, and perhaps a little because of association. Now, these colors, etc., are sensations in my eye, produced by vibrations on the ether between me and the tree. The real tree is something quite different, a combination of colorless, shapeless, invisible atoms. It follows then that neither the tree nor any other material object can be beautiful in itself. I can never see them as they are, and if I could, it would give me no delight. The beauty, therefore, is not in matter at all, but is something purely spiritual, arising mysteriously out of the relation between me and the tree, or perhaps, as I suggest in my song, out of some indwelling spirit behind the matter of the tree, the dryad, in fact. Man, this is a very interesting peek into how he's seeing the world and how he's thinking, because I honestly don't think this is that different from where he ultimately landed. Now, some people who know a lot more about C.S. Lewis than I do might disagree, but Lewis is heavily influenced throughout his entire life, including now, by the Scottish writer and pastor George MacDonald. And this is kind of how George MacDonald talks about nature and trees and leaves. However, George MacDonald does not discount the material, the way that we take in the quote-unquote material substrate that Lewis is kind of casting off as nothing, and that it's all the spirit behind it that matters. So there's a little bit, as I'm thinking out loud, there's a little bit of what MacDonald was saying there, but MacDonald would say, no, that dryad spirit, the thing that you're calling the dryad spirit, MacDonald would say, no, that's God, that's the creator. And all of those things that your eye is experiencing and what it's taking in and all that matter and all that aspect, that's a part of his spirit that he's conveying as well. And you being able to experience that and delight in it was all a part of the design in the first place. But at this stage in Lewis's philosophy or in his way of seeing the world, he's saying, yeah, all of that stuff and how I receive it on the physical plane, it's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. There's a deeper connection there, and all of that is superfluous. And I think McDonald would correct him and say, no, 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 it's not. It's all at the same level. It's all meaningful. You can't discount any level or layer of it. So that's my interpretation. What does that make you think of?
Yeah, I have a buddy that's going to be mad at me because I haven't read nearly enough. But this is before his conversion to Christianity, isn't it? Because you think C.S. Lewis, you just think Christianity. I completely forgot that this is probably before that.
Yeah, so he started with a Christian upbringing, but
Oh,
he started, with the loss of his mother, that kind of hurt things. And then he began to read some works, and just get his interest started taking him towards the idea. Oh wow! I just noticed Tayo's comments here. Let me take a look. He says streaming wars. I see. Apparently, I'm on at the same time as Chad. It's only because I had to start a little bit early today, just in time for Jeff singing. Sorry, Tayo, I didn't try to sing. Bless you, Daniel. He says here, and then Lewis was proposing relational ontology. Yeah, maybe so, Tayo. I don't know enough about relational ontology, but it's almost like personalism, I think, that Luke talks about. So I'm not sure how much of what Lewis has said right here that Luke Thompson would disagree with. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, Daniel. He moved more in the direction where he became very convinced by some different authors and philosophies that he was reading, that in particular Christianity and the Jesus of the Bible, like the Jesus of the Bible and the miracles and the resurrection and the one who started this entire religion that spun off from Jesus, like there were two figures. One is the mythological Jesus, and then one is the historical Jesus. And the historical Jesus, in Lewis's view, at least at this stage in his life, was, yes, there was a person in historical time, just like you and me are in historical time. But all of these other things, like the supernatural aspect of it, it's all mythology that grew up around him. It was actually informed and influenced by older and more broadcast across cultures versions of a dying and resurrecting God. And those myths kind of made their way into the minds of the Christians who built up all of this mythology around this historical figure. So at this stage in his life, he's at best agnostic, and he certainly doesn't believe that Jesus as presented in Christian tradition is a real thing, but it was connected to a historical person.
that's cool. And in the part we just read, you can definitely see the seeds of how he's going to end up going back to that eventually.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So he says, you see that conviction is gaining ground on the matter that, after all, spirit, and he's got spirit here capitalized, spirit does exist, and that we come in contact with the spiritual element by means of these thrills. Okay, so he's saying that they're not useless, but they're only a conductor for us to come into contact with this great spirit. I fancy that there is something right outside time and place which did not create matter, as the Christians say, but is matter's great enemy. And the beauty is the call of the Spirit in that something to the Spirit in us. You see how frankly I admit that my views have changed. I hope I don't bore you. Yeah, this is fascinating. All right, I'm going to continue. This next part is scribbled out. It says here, I admit the associations of the word pedestry are unfortunate, but you should rise above that. As well, what does Uranian mean? U-R-A-N-I-A-N. It ought to mean heavenly, as far as my knowledge goes, and I will stick to the word that I understand in preference. So again, I can only presume that he's talking about Arthur Greaves's... my cat's here playing with stuff on the desk again. Arthur Greaves's same-sex attraction in some of his fantasies that he's probably shared with Lewis. Because pedestry, if I remember right, is something to do with, or at least in Roman times, with Roman soldiers. There were younger men in the army, and out there in the field, and especially just before battle, where they thought they were going to die. They made very strong, deep, loving connections with younger men, and had certain physical relations with them. So I won't dig in any further than that, because I could get more graphic with it, but that's not what I'm trying to do on this channel. Just trying to add some context to what I think he's talking about here.
Yeah. I think, if I'm correct, I think that goes all the way back to like Socrates' time. Like this is not a new thing.
Yeah, agreed. All right, he continues, I don't agree with you about Trollops being mamby-pamby. In fact, the sentimental part seems to me very slightly sketched, and only to serve as a turning point for the delightful Austenesque work about... Uh-oh, she's got to knock a cup off the table. Let's move this over here. All right. Austenesque work about the Mrs. Prudies, etc. I have now read The Warden and am more than halfway through Dr. Thorne. I cannot understand why you got tired of him. This is Anthony Trollope's The Warden, published 1885, and then also Dr. Thorne, published 1858. He says, I can't understand why you got tired of him. One can never really say what will please another person. I told you I was reading Blackwood's new one, The Promise of Air. It is very disappointing, being merely a long and tedious expansion of the theory that could have been explained in a single essay. Although it is in story form, nothing ever happens. I'm afraid if he goes on being, quote, serious after this fashion, we shall have lost a good romancer for a bad mystic. Can you imagine how I enjoyed my journey to London? First of all, the sight and smell of the sea that I have missed for so many long and weary months, and then the beautiful green country seen from the train. I suppose it's because I've been shut up in a hut for so long, but I think I never enjoyed anything so much as that scenery. All the white in the hedges and the fields so full of buttercups that in the distance they seem to be of solid gold, and everything such a bright, bright green. I am sure our hills look lovely now, and the wood must be full of life and sweet smells. Yes. Oh, you know what I just realized as he's writing about traveling back to London? He wanted him to come visit him in London, but I think the air raids were happening in France. So I was mistaken there, where I was saying, oh, I can't believe Lewis is missing the connection of why would you come visit him in the hospital when there's air raids happening. But the air raids the bombings weren't happening in London at the time. They were happening in France, and that's why he couldn't leave to go back to London. I'm just now catching up. My cat.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that helps for sure. It's amazing how much you know about this.
Oh, well, I mean, I've read a bit of Lewis's several biographies on him, so but again, I'm no scholar, It's part of why part of this channel's name is Surf, SERF, because I'm kind of a nobody and have no real official education. Still need to get a bachelor's
You and
degree.
me both.
Still haven't gotten one. Hey, Gavin says.
Yeah, that's the reason I'm in construction.
It's all right. Construction is an important profession. Gavin, God bless you too. I see you there in the comments. I know you can't see what I'm bringing up on the screen, Daniel. I apologize. It's just my setup here won't allow for it. And then I'll bring up Tayo's comment on the screen, but I'm not going to say it. There we go.
I don't know this Tayo yet, but at some point he needs to jump on.
Yeah, Tayo's over in actually Tayo is not far from London. I don't think Tayo, you can correct me, but I know he's certainly in the UK. And Tayo went to the Chino estuary event. I guess that was a couple of years ago now. And Daniel, we met Donnie in Connecticut. Donnie was at Chino, and Donnie knows Tayo, so there's your connection to
Okay.
Tayo. I've never met
Yeah,
Tayo
he needs
in
to come
person.
on as an expert on London.
Yeah, yeah. Tayo needs to come and tell us about all these things that I'm getting wrong about England as I read through this. All right. Let's see. Yes, after all our old conversations, I can feel otherwise about the lusts of the flesh. Is not desire merely a kind of sugar plum that nature gives us? Yeah. I always hate an open door behind me whenever I'm trying to read. Let me try that again. Is not desire merely a kind of sugar plum that nature gives us to make us breed, as she does the beetles and toads, so that both we and they may beget more creatures to struggle in the same net, nature, or the common order of things? It's really produced in man a sort of Frankenstein who is learning to shake her off, for man alone of all things can master his instincts. Man, there's such a mix of interesting thought that he's working with. He goes on to say, from my window, I see a big flat plain of houses and beyond that actually a green hill with trees on it, which I am told is the aristocratic district of High Hampstead. In the foreground is the Euston Station Hotel, bringing old memories. It says, this is French here, mais où sont les neiges? And he doesn't translate this for me in the footnote. I'm gonna do a bad thing here, Daniel. I'm gonna bring Robot Lady back online and see if she can answer this for me. Okay, she's in standard voice now. Hey, Robot Lady, I'm bringing you back online because I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff. I'm here and can hear you clearly. What's your question?
I need you to translate this French for me that Lewis puts in his letter to Arthur Greaves. It says, mais où sont les neiges? I'm going to spell it for you because I highly doubt that I pronounced most of that correctly. M-A-I-S, and then the next word is O-U, and then the next word is S-O-N-T, and then the next word is L-E-S, and then the next word is N-E-I-G-E-S. Can you translate that for me into English?
It looks like Lewis wrote Mais où sont les neiges, which translates to, but where are the snows in English? This phrase is a reference to a famous line in French literature, Mais où sont les neiges d'antan? Or but where are the snows of yesteryear? From Ballade des Dames du Temps Jadis by François Villon. It's often used to evoke nostalgia for things that have passed.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I had no idea what that meant, and I'll probably forget it, but it's good to know for right now. There, I'm cultured. Robot Lady, I'm gonna turn you off for just a second because we've got some more comments coming in. All right, Tayo says this, Daniel. I'm certain Jeff knows more about historical London than I do. I can recommend good chicken and chip shops, though.
That's important. I miss fish and chips.
And then Sandy, of course, being from Canada, probably knows a great deal of French. She has translated it for me, and it's "Where are the snows?" So Sandy, credit for you for already knowing that. I had to reach out to a robot to explain it to me. But feel free to join the show whenever you have time, Sandy. You're always welcome. Let's see, but I have to finish this letter and then I've got to go because I'm already past time. But here we go, Daniel. Here's how it ends. Your quotation from Pater, P-A-T-E-R, expresses my, that's a capital P, so Pater apparently is an author, expresses my attitude to philosophy exactly. I don't really think it will teach me the truth, but I do think it will supply me with thoughts and feelings that I may be able to turn into poetry. And by the way, Arthur Greaves is a believer. He is a Christian. So he's kind of having these conversations back and forth with his childhood friend Lewis as he's seeing him go through these different, stages and working through philosophy and religion and how he sees the world and how he thinks about it. And one of the things that Lewis said, and I was reading in the appendix of this book about some of these main players that, he's writing these letters to and talking about. And he basically, looking back later in life on these letters that he wrote back and forth with his friend Arthur and just kind of reflecting on their friendship, he said he was so patient with me And the biggest thing that he taught me was charity, because he was just like so charitable with me when I was basically a jerk, through my young years, and some of the things that I would write to him in my letters. Sandy says, not much French, but she's practicing. Well, good on you, Sandy. I have two years of high school French, and so that's how I know how to pronounce maybe one or two French words. But I have no idea how to speak it, or if I listen to it, there's no way that I could detect what someone was saying. I know a few phrases, but that's it. Okay, sorry, Daniel. I'm talking a lot. If you want to say something again, feel free to jump in.
No, go for it. I'll barge in.
Okay. What did he say? Turn into poetry. Okay. As you turn all kinds of nourishment into blood. Oh, he was finishing his thought there, so I'll read it again. He said, I don't really think it will teach me the truth, but I do think it will supply me with thoughts and feelings that I may be able to turn into poetry, as you turn all kinds of nourishment into blood. Not sure what that means. I was glad to see Willie, I suppose Bill, since his marriage. He seems to be in good form. And footnoted here, this is Arthur's brother that he's talking about, a guy named William Edward Greaves, who married Marion Janet Cadbury on the 14th of February, 1918. And so this letter was written, obviously after that, in May, of the same year. He says, goodbye, old man. Write by return. Yours ever, Jack. So that, Daniel, is all that I have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll give you the last word, and then I'll do my sign off. So anything you want to say?
No, thanks, Jeff. This was fun. And we need to get some of the people that are in the comments that are way more knowledgeable than me in here.
Well, I agree that we need to get more people to join, but just having anyone join is fantastic. So I do it at a crazy time of day that's hard for most people to make. I do plan on reaching out to some. I've already reached out to Sherry, and this is actually an open invitation to anyone, obviously, to join, like when I'm doing the live stream. But I'll just put it out there. If you have a favorite Lewis book, or a favorite Lewis passage, or something, a favorite Lewis essay, or something like that, I'm eventually going to get to it in this project, but we don't have to wait, because we can have like a separate recording, and then I can just bring it up. I can record it where we're reading a certain part of that passage, and then I can bring it in to when I actually catch up in this project. And so we can kind of, while we won't be doing it real time, I can bring that portion in once I'm reading it. I can keep track of where we were in that work. So if this time doesn't work for someone, that's fine. You can come in, and we can coordinate something where we can record it outside of this. That's what I was trying to say.
Very cool. I love what you're trying to do here. It's ambitious, but I love it. It's cool.
It's fun. It's a project that I've had, sitting on the shelf for at least 8 years now. I look back to a conversation that I had with Paul, and I'm like, yeah, I'm working on this C.S. Lewis project where I'm trying to read everything that he wrote. And I looked back on that, about 2 months ago, and I'm like, I still haven't done that. I've got to force myself to do it. So I decided to just put it up here and make it a daily thing. And so that's how I'm getting it done. So thank you for joining in my project, and I open it up to anyone who wants to join. All right, absolutely. Daniel. Robot Lady's not with us anymore, but thanks to Robot Lady, thanks to you, Daniel, and thanks to everyone for joining and watching and participating. Sandy, one last thing here, says she needs a list of channels, and yes, she'd love to chat sometime. So perfect. We can set something up, Sandy, especially if there's a Lewis piece that you like, but even if you don't, we can just have a conversation not related to anything C.S. Lewis, but whatever you want to talk about over on the Randos United channel. So we can stick stuff up over there too if it's not related to this project. All right, I've said more than I need to say. Sandy says she thinks she had lots of books, but this is new. Lots of Lewis's books, but this is new. Yeah, I'm reading through his collected letters, Robot Lady. So there are like 3 volumes. Robot Lady. I just called Sandy Robot Lady. I didn't mean to say that. It's this big, thick book. This is one of 3 volumes, and this one runs from 1905 to 1931. Letters. This is mostly letters to his family, but then also to his best friend, Arthur Greaves, that happen in this book. I have the second volume. The third volume I don't have. I'll eventually get to it. But yeah, there's a whole list of things that he's written that I have compiled and continue to compile that I'm working my way through. So that's it. I'm going to stop right there. Thank you everyone for joining. Until next time when I continue my read on C.S. Lewis, take care of yourself.
C.S. Lewis thoughts, we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape's rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stats. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From books, tales of old, we dive deep, cross the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and control. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts, we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to